Russian forces are once again attempting to land on the islands and establish footholds for further advances, according to Serhii Bratchuk, spokesman for the Ukrainian Volunteer Army. In terms of combat developments, there have been no significant changes. Russian forces remain active, said Serhii Bratchuk, spokesman for the Ukrainian Volunteer Army. The only thing is, they have slightly increased their firepower both in the Zaporizhzhia and Prydniprovskyi, i.e. Kherson directions. The continuing terror against civilians remains a characteristic and common feature for both directions, noted Bratchuk on Espreso TV. According to a spokesperson, the Russian troops are acting mainly at the tactical level in the Zaporizhzhia direction. This is the area of responsibility of the 58th Combined Arms Army of the Russian occupiers. Russian paratroopers and motorized infantry units are fighting here. They are trying to regroup, in particular in the Orikhiv direction. The Huliaipole direction is currently somewhat more active. Assault groups are being pulled up there to advance in certain areas. We are talking about the settlement of Mali Shcherbaky, Stepove, Lobkove, where the Ukrainian forces managed to stop the enemy. However, the Russians are gradually involving a mechanized component. This has already become a characteristic feature along the entire front line, emphasized Bratchuk. Bratchuk also noted an escalation in the Dnipro direction, emphasizing that while large-scale mechanized assaults have subsided, Russian forces have shifted to intensified assault operations on the islands. According to him, the invading Russian forces are once again attempting to land and establish bridgeheads for a potential advance toward the right bank. It is obvious that this is the task they are facing. Apparently, the occupiers have received orders to speed up its implementation, as the intensity of hostilities in this area has increased. The Russians are actively using watercraft, which are being destroyed by the Ukrainian defense forces. The occupiers are also trying to land directly on the right bank. Such activity was recorded last week, in particular in the area of Stepove. Traditionally, they try to attack on the islands, but have huge problems. The problem isn't just who's in the Kremlin, but also the lack of evacuation. Many dead are left on the islands, along with the wounded, who often end up dead too. This keeps the morale of the occupying forces low, yet they're forced to keep attacking, because they're Russians, still willing to be cannon fodder, Bratchuk concluded.
President Donald Trump is hosting Nayib Bukele, the president of El Salvador, at the White House on Monday as the small Central American nation becomes a critical linchpin of the U.S. administration's mass deportation operation. According to Associated Press, during the Oval Office meeting, the U.S. president expressed some impatience at the pace of nuclear negotiations with Iran. "I think they're tapping us along," he said. The next meeting is scheduled for this coming weekend. Trump also praised his own health again after undergoing an annual physical. He says the results indict, "You've got me for a little longer." The president spent hours Friday at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. He said after it that testing went well. A medical report on the physical was released Sunday. But Trump brought up the test again a day later, telling reporters in the Oval Office on Monday that he did well on a cognitive exam performed as part of it. "I like taking them because they're not too tough for me to take," Trump said of cognitive tests. He said his health was good enough that he should be around for years, or at the very least, a little longer. Trump criticized former President Joe Biden and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky but not Russian leader Vladimir Putin. Trump has previously described the strike on Sumy as a mistake. On Monday, he said the mistake was allowing the war to start in the first place. Biden could have stopped it and Zelensky could have stopped it and Putin should have never started it, he said. Everybody's to blame.
That's a long time. That's a long time. So I think they might be tapping us along. But Iran has to get rid of the concept of a nuclear weapon. They cannot have a nuclear. We had a meeting with them on Saturday. We have another meeting scheduled next Saturday. I said, that's a long time. You know, that's a long time. So I think they might be tapping us along. But Iran has to get rid of the concept of a nuclear weapon. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. He can't have a nuclear weapon. Nobody can have. We can't have anybody having nuclear weapons. You know, we can't have nuclear weapons. And I think they're tapping us along because we're so used to dealing with stupid people in this country. We cannot have a nuclear weapon.
Does that include a potential strike on Iranian nuclear facilities?
Of course it does.
And just a follow-up question, a clarification.
The only thing is, one thing, simple. It's really simple. They can't have a nuclear weapon. And they got to go fast because they're fairly close to having one. And they're not going to have one. And if we have to do something very harsh, we'll do it. And I'm not doing it for us, I'm doing it for the world. And these are radicalized people, and they cannot have a nuclear weapon.
Does that include a potential strike on Iranian nuclear facilities?
Of course it does.
Then you repeatedly mentioned last night that Russia's attack on Ukraine was a mistake. What is the exact mistake? And had you given Putin a deadline to actually move toward a ceasefire?
The mistake was letting the war happen. If Biden were competent, and if Zelensky were competent, and I don't know that he is. We had a rough session with this guy over here. He just kept asking for more and more. That war should have never been allowed to happen. That war, I went 4 years and Putin wouldn't even bring it up. And as soon as the election was rigged and I wasn't here, that war started. There was no way that war should have been allowed to happen. And Biden should have stopped it. And you take a look at Putin. I'm not saying anybody's an angel. But I will tell you, I went 4 years and it wasn't even a question. He's not going to do it. And it was the apple of his eye, but there was no way that he would have done it. All you had to do is lower oil prices. If you lowered oil prices. That's a war that should have never been allowed to start. And Biden could have stopped it. And Zelensky could have stopped it. And Putin should have never started it. Everybody's to blame. Mark, and one of the doctors said, sir, I've never seen anybody get that kind of, that was the highest mark. I hope you're happy with that. Although they haven't been bugging me too much to take a cognitive. And by the way, I took my cognitive exam as part of my physical exam, and I got the highest mark, and one of the doctors said, sir, I've never seen anybody get that kind of, that was the highest mark. I hope you're happy with that. Although they haven't been bugging me too much to take a cognitive. But I did do my physical and it was released. I hope you're all happy with it. I notice there's no question, so probably you are. But the cognitive, they said to me, sir, would you like to take a cognitive test? I said, did Biden take one? No. Did anybody take one? No, not too many people took them. I said, what about Obama? Did he take one? No, he didn't take one either. I said, let me be the only one to take one. But I've actually taken them 3 times already. I like taking them because they're not too tough for me to take. Yeah, so that's good. She's got me for a little longer.
Would the U.S. be willing to pay for those facilities to be opened if new ones were going to be built?
I'd do something. We'd help them out. I was there, Walter Reed. I was there for, 5-6 hours. You were there with me. But I took a full physical and it came out perfecto, so that's good. She's got me for a little longer.